Joining me now to discuss this, Mubin Sheikh, a former jihadist and author of Undercover Jihadi. Richard Showborough is a counterterrorism expert, and David Gartenstein-Ross is a senior fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome, gentlemen. David, I'm going to start with you. The Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott told reporters today that Manharan Monis was well known to the state and Commonwealth authorities, had a long history of violent crime and an infatuation with extremism and had mental instability. How could this have happened?
That's a great question, and the question of whether it's an intelligence failure is going to loom large, I think, in Australian discourse. For one thing, he openly pledged allegiance to the Islamic State on November 17th on his own website, in addition to the fact that he had about 50 counts of assault against him and that he was considered an accessory to his ex-wife's murder. All of this amounts to at least the notion that maybe authorities should have had him on the radar, maybe they should have stopped him from getting a gun, maybe something could have been done prior to this hostage-taking and killing being carried out.
So the question, David, is why wasn't it?
That's an excellent question. We don't know this early on. When I look at the facts, it seems to me like there was, in fact, a good likelihood of an intelligence failure. But until things start to unravel and you get a sense of what authorities were actually doing, it's difficult to really know. One thing I'll say is that it's difficult in cases of lone wolf terrorism to stop often because someone has to have committed a crime. But in this case, the question is, were there ways to use immigration laws to get him out of the country? He was already wanted. He was already accused of a number of other crimes. Were there other authorities that they could have used?
Moving to you now, you watched this hostage siege overnight and you monitored social media. What was the reaction?
Well, at the start, ISIS followers were kind of confused. When the headband was first shown, he wore a headband in Arabic, "Nahnu junduka ya Muhammad," we are your army, O Muhammad. This is usually used by Shia, mostly Hezbollah individuals. Mind you, the theology is universal enough for transferability for Sunni use. So a lot of the ISIS fans were like, wait a second, there's something odd with this guy's an Iranian guy. But once the dust had settled, they had seen the impact of it, some of them did start to come out and say, oh, no, he converted, he's one of us, and ISIS has struck again, and they did continue to play up this message.
Richard, is this just the kind of guy that ISIS wants?
It's exactly the type of person they're looking for, and we're going to start seeing these type of events unfold globally now that ISIS has masterminded the social media network.
I asked that because he reportedly said he was a victim of political vendetta on his website, and he also compared himself to Julian Assange. Richard?
Yes, of course, but what we're seeing with ISIS is not only the mastering of the social media, but all of these individual fighters that are over there. After this conflict has resolved itself, these individuals have to come back to the countries that they came from. You're going to see that happen here in the United States as well as abroad. That's what the biggest fear for the United States intelligence community and law enforcement community is. These individuals who are sympathizing with the ISIS fighters, the fighters who are currently there, coming back home and then trying to track the lone wolf, which we all know as counterterrorism experts is almost impossible to do.
David, let's dig a little deeper there about these lone wolves, because recently there's a hatchet attack in New York, right, an open fire in Canada. Now this attack in Sydney, leaving 2 people dead in a cafe. How concerned are you about a severe lone wolf attack in New York or in America?
I think we should be concerned about the rise in lone wolf attacks. You named a few, but overall, by my count, there's been at least 6 different lone wolf attacks that have been ISIS-inspired this year. There's also the Brussels Jewish Museum shooting, another attack in Canada, and arguably the beheading in Oklahoma, where the guy was had photos of ISIS up on his Facebook page, although there were a few different motivations there. To put that into perspective, in an average year for the past decade, there are 7.3 lone wolf attacks total across all kinds of terrorism. I think that Richard's exactly right, that one of the reasons we're seeing this spike is because of social media. Generally, terrorism is a group thing, and the reason why is because to get someone to carry out an extreme act like terrorism, you generally need a group that's reinforcing their ideas and pushing them towards greater extremism. Social media can actually serve that role because it creates community. Studies that have been done on this psychologically show that relationships, in fact, can deepen faster on social media than in real life because you get to the heart of what's important to you, especially if you have a fringe ideology.
Mubin, he was an Iranian refugee who followed the Sunni branch of Islam. Does this hostage seize raise the question of militant Islam again?
Well, of course it does. I mean, what ISIS is doing, it's attracting these kind of deranged individuals. I mean, this was still a terrorist attack, but you know, by a deranged individual. He's not a psychopath. I mean, psychopathy is very rare when it comes to terrorism. Mental instability is quite common. You know, whatever issues he had. I mean, he was known since 2008. The Shia community, when he was still a Shia, you know, urged the police to investigate him. They passed on the information to the authorities, as we would expect a cooperating group to do. And, you know, I share the concern of others when they say that it could have possibly been an intelligence failure. But again, it's impossible to know when this individual is gonna act. I mean, just short of monitoring somebody 24/7, there's really nothing else you can do.
Mubin, Richard, David, thank you, all of you gentlemen.